Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So this is going to be a 420 at 420, and this one is not going to be all that long, maybe 30 minutes or so. But I wanted to hit on the article that was released by Politico in the New York Times, essentially saying that there was a black budget project to investigate UFOs by the United States government. You don't say. You don't say. Let's see, here it is. Whoa, that's not what I want. It's gonna make me go through the video again. All right, so the video is, this is the New York Times, glowing orals, crap. Come on, come on, come on. I want to see the video again. There's a video where they show video footage of... There we go. Alright, so let's flip over. Glowing orbs and black money, the Pentagon's mysterious UFO program. Now, the wild part about this is the United States has had a UFO program before where they were studying this stuff. And you would imagine that if somebody, some vehicle was invading your airspace, you would study the thing that's invading your airspace. It makes perfect sense to do so. Now, people like to say, oh, those things are swamp gas and all this other stuff. The United States has had programs where it was investigating unidentified flying phenomena before. The guy who was head of that program left that program in disgust because he felt that the military was excluding certain information or pushing for certain point of views that wasn't necessarily indicative of reality. The guy became a UFO investigator in and of himself. Fast forward to Stephen Greer. Now, Stephen Greer can be a blowhard. He can be a blowhard. And he has this thing of talking about himself all the time. He can be insufferable to listen to. But if you're talking about somebody organizing this organized way of going about pulling in information to try to make his point, I don't think anybody has done it better than Greer. I mean, he's had whistleblowers left and right. The guy has had one military official after the next, one person who was in some kind of aerospace thing, NASA, all these groups. People who are in these organizations are just saying, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced. I mean, look, it's a formidable thing to say that each and every one of those people are lying when they have nothing to gain out of this process. So, it's fucking amazing. But in this particular case, I love this because it makes perfect sense to me that the United States would study this. Anybody in their right mind could look up at the stars and say, hey, we're doing forays into space. Wouldn't other civilizations try to do the exact same thing? Now, that takes one jump. It is a religious argument to me to believe that Earth is the only planet that has life. If there was a God and a God did that, fair enough, because at that point God can do whatever he wants and God is going to create a sandbox world. But why would anybody believe that? There are more stars, there are more universes there than, not universes, there are more galaxies and grains of sand on the beach of Earth. Why on earth would the belief system be that this is the only one? That seems like a religious belief to me. And if you go with the belief that there has to be somebody else, there had to be something else, we're not the only thing that's out here. Just by virtue of numbers, we are not going to be the only thing that's out here. Just probability, we're not the only thing that's out here. Do they have the capacity to get here? Now that one becomes interesting. And the reason I say one becomes interesting because it becomes this extrapolation of what technology is now versus what technology could be. What is the technology that a civilization could come up with to try to traverse space? Is it possible that their understanding of what space is will be fundamentally different than our own? Is it possible that just because we have a few hundred years of science, that few hundred years of science does not understand each and every principle of our reality? I'm making this point that science progresses and science leaps and it learns more things and more things and more things. It is inevitable at some point. And inevitable is too strong. But it makes perfect sense to me that what science will look like in 1,000 years may be fundamentally different than what science looks like now, meaning what the scientific paradigm of our reality is. That's what I'm trying to get across. Our capacity for technology has only been a few hundred years. What does that look like in 1,000? What does it look like in 2,000? 5,000? What does it look like for a civilization to have been out there that didn't necessarily have this competitive thing that we have, meaning they have a cooperative society, meaning the people who are on that particular planet work in this kind of coordination in order to build and advance and everything else? What would that world look like when they didn't necessarily have these hang-ups that we had, that didn't necessarily spend all of their resources on trying to murder each other? What does that world look like? What does science look like on that planet? Meaning when they start to understand the universe. And is it possible to have a paradigm of the world that goes beyond just this idea of raw science? When you're getting into this idea of what do other cultures look like, that is a fucking fascinating conversation. You're ripping the chains off of imagination. There may be certain things that these cultures will be, you know, like environmental factors and everything else. But when we start asking these questions, this question goes beyond it's just basic bare bones physical matter reality thing. We're talking about life out there, where we don't necessarily know what out there is. It makes perfect sense that the military, being somewhat cynical and always looking for threats, if something was invading their airspace, which something is and was invading their airspace, and they don't necessarily understand what it is, and yes, it was just based on the study itself, they didn't necessarily know what it was, that they would try to study those things. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. I don't understand the way the public looks at this. I gotta be honest. We're a ball hurling through space. We're a ball hurling through space, flying through the cosmos. We don't pay attention to that. Like in a normal everyday life, we just function from the standpoint of, you know, this person needs to get a job, this person looks at some kind of entertainment, this person has sex with his wife, this person is cheating on his wife, etc. You're talking about a life. But the idea of the larger context of that life is usually not really paid attention to. We pay attention to weather, fair enough. The seasons, fair enough. But even the seasons, I would make the point that people don't necessarily look at those things as being changes in the position of the planet, you know, with regards to where it is in the solar system. I think they look at it from the standpoint of just seasons. We're in the cosmos. We're in a fucking space. We're hurling through space. This is, I mean, yes, I get excited over this. I'm fascinated by this particular conversation, and I get sometimes. I get maybe annoyed. Annoyed may be too strong of the word for it. There's certain angst associated with just the normality of what takes place in regards to the conversation that we have in this life. This kind of unreality of sorts, working for something that's not real, when the larger questions are off the table. I love this article. I love this article, and I love the fact that it's in the news and it's splashed in the news. And you can make a case, and some cynical SOBs will make the case, that the reason why this is in the press is because this is a conversation that wants to be had. Hillary Clinton is found walking with a book showing UFOs. Hillary Clinton said, "I will open up the UFO files." John Podesta saying the biggest regret in his time in office was he wasn't able to secure the release of the UFO files. This is what these guys are saying. Hillary Clinton was going to be the group that was going in, and she said before, "I am going to open the files." In the Podesta leaks, she wants to question and ask about Jimmy Kimmel. She wants Jimmy Kimmel to ask her a question about UFOs. And she says, well, no, they're not UFOs now. They're, what is it? Unidentified aerial phenomena. Unidentified aerial phenomena. They're UAPs. UAPs. The difference between a UAP and a UFO? Zero. She wanted to redefine the context of what those things were. She didn't want all of this cognitive baggage associated with the term UFO. Calling it something else allows them to change the idea of what that thing is and turning it into, you know, it mars the idea, even though you're talking about the exact same thing. Saying her husband was 2 weeks, what's his name? So her husband was 2 weeks to release the files. France has released their files. Britain has released their files. Other countries around the globe have released that information showing some of the stuff that the United States, for the most part, pretends it as if it doesn't exist. Take a look at this video. This is the New York Times.
Dude, this is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. Girl going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like look at that thing. It's rotating.
I can show several of those videos. Like, you can put your hand on multiple videos where, or even testimony of pilots saying, I was in this situation, I didn't necessarily know what that thing was, that thing zoomed by me as if I was standing still. There are plenty of this, this testimony is all over the place. People always say, well, wait a minute, I mean, people can't keep a secret. Yes, people can keep a secret. The testimony is all over the place. There's this weird cognitive bias where these people just shut this off and they would say, nobody, I mean, this is just too big of a secret. They wouldn't be able to keep it. No shit. No shit. And this stuff gets leaked. Now the question becomes, is this leaked in a way that's somewhat planned in order to kind of put this thing into the consciousness of the public itself? This kind of long drawn out process of trying to get the public to not freak the fuck out when this thing of alien civilization comes up. I don't know. What I do know is this idea that the CIA works with like entertainment industry and stuff like that to put certain things out into the public consciousness. Now, the more cynical among us have taken this perspective that part of the reason of many of these UFO things that are out, like the movies and that type of stuff, is to try to get the public acclimated to this idea of something else. That if the American public found out the truth about what maybe the government knows, or what they at very least think they know, that it would freak the public out and it would fundamentally destabilize this particular country and this particular world. Meaning, if you say that, oh my God, there's something else that got here, something else is here, and you have a population that's freaked out even about immigration, people, other human beings, freaked out about other human beings. But take that part to the side for the moment. The question becomes, wait a minute, how did they get here? How did they get here? How the fuck do you get here? Like, imagine the expansiveness with regards to this idea of physics. It completely takes the top off what we ourselves postulate. At this point, it's not human cognition and human beings not necessarily knowing whether they're right or wrong on a certain thing. It's, well, if this is true, then what we understand of things is completely incomplete. There has to be more. What else don't we know? Imagine the level of expansiveness that is. I mean, it rips the chain off of science and technology, even to some degree, ideas of religion and everything else. All of that stuff goes up for grabs and all of that stuff goes out the window. And that is a fucking immensely destabilizing prospect if you sit and think about it. My argument would be, don't think about it too much. Don't think about it too much. You freak yourself out when you think about stuff too much. In this case, though, my concern here, and Luca Clemente have given me shit about this, because I've said before that I've been somewhat sketchy on allowing people to know this information. When I started looking into this, because I was fascinated by this, and I became enamored by this thing. I was like, is this true? Like, if this is true, this is the mind-blowing. This is the biggest thing that's ever happened to mankind. And as I looked into it, one of the first areas that you find that proliferates online is the fearmongers, the people who are terrified. It's like, oh my God, they're coming to get us. They're taking babies. They're doing experiments. They're putting things in our ass cheeks. I mean, like, full-on threat. Like, they're at our shores. They're coming to get us. We got to fight together. You know, we got to fight. There are lizard people out there, and they're going to eat our babies. So you have that group. And that group is terrifying. That group is absolutely terrifying. Then you have this other group that's peace and love. Oh, they're our space brothers, and they're just here. They love us, etc., etc. Now, the question becomes, which is true, is neither true, and is both of these people, for the most part, in some kind of their own ideology of sorts. You have hard-nosed investigators, people who try to kick the tires and who do the information and everything else. I don't like the fear-mongering and the peace and love thing. Yeah. So I end up on the side of the people who are like, okay, we want to know what this is. We want to have an open mind about trying to figure out what this is in regards to contact phenomena and everything else. Everything's on the table. Those are the guys that are like, I don't like the fear mongers because I don't necessarily see the point in the fear mongering. If something was coming here, their technology is way beyond us. And if their technology is way beyond us, they could have extinguished our civilization at any point along it, particularly before we got to the point where we can even acknowledge that something else was out there. So, no, I'm not necessarily terrified of this. I'm more terrified of us. I'm more terrified of us. We're animals. Fucking animals. We think of all the wars that we've had over a period of time. World War I, one guy gets shot. One guy gets shot. And what we considered human rationale ended up in a situation where after one guy gets shot, the entire world tumbles into a massive world war. Fucking amazing. 20 years later, oh, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Our lives have been a persistent series of wars and a persistent series of history where 1% has dominated the overwhelming majority of the masses. And that mass is never fully getting to this point of being self-actualized and understanding that they are 99%. Why do you want to live in a situation where you're being subjugated by somebody else? I don't understand why that's okay. Why would you want to live in a situation where you're vulnerable? I don't understand why that's okay. It's a tangent. I'm just trying to make this point that I'm more terrified of us than I'm more terrified of something coming to our shores. That's all. That's all. Let me read this article, because I love this. Absolutely love this. And the UFO people have been saying this for God knows how long. There's a black budget. This money from that we've been spending is going towards these sources. We spent $5 trillion or $6 trillion that's unaccounted for in 2015. Think about that. And when you think about that from that context, you think, what the fuck are they doing with all this money? Well, maybe some of these things are going to black budget projects that are somewhat off the books. Well, in this case, the New York Times has apparently found something. In the $600 billion annual defense budget, $22 million spent on advanced aerospace threat identification program was almost impossible to find, which was how the Pentagon wanted it. For years, the program investigated reports of unidentified flying objects, according to Defense Department officials, interviews with program participants, and records obtained by New York Times. It was run by a military intelligence official, Luis Elizondo, on the 5th floor of the Pentagon's sea ring deep within the building's maze. The Defense Department has never acknowledged the existence of the program, which it says it shut down in 2012. But its backers say that, while the Pentagon ended the funding for the efforts of that time, the program remains in existence. For the past 5 years, the officials said what the program has continued to investigate episodes brought to them by service members while also carrying out their Defense Department duties. The shadowy program, parts of it remain classified, began in 2007, and initially it was largely funded at the request of Harry Reid, the Nevada Democrat who was Senate Majority Leader at the time, who has long had an interest in space phenomena. Most of the money went to an aerospace research company run by a billionaire entrepreneur and longtime friend of Mr. Reid's, Robert Bigelow, who is currently working with NASA to produce expandable craft for humans to use in space. On CBS 60 Minutes in May, Mr. Bigelow said he was absolutely convinced that aliens existed and that UFOs have visited Earth. Working with Mr. Bigelow, Las Vegas-based company, the program produced documents that it describes sightings of an aircraft that seemed to move at high velocity with no visible signs of propulsion or hovered with no apparent means of lift. This has been stuff that the UFO researchers have been saying for the past 50, 60 years. They've been saying the exact same thing. And you have this situation where people in the United States government have believed this, have been doing investigations into this, and have been looking and putting money behind it. These guys are saying, yeah, this is we don't do this anymore. And people are like, no, they're still doing this. They're still searching this. Of course they're researching this. If you have something breaching your shores, regardless of what you tell the public, Regardless of what you tell the public, certainly you understand there are things that these people know that they don't necessarily tell the public. And you're looking and he's like, what is that? What is that? What is that? We don't understand what that is. You have service member coming to him and say, this thing is moving at magnificent velocities and I see no propulsion. How's it doing that? It turned in midair. It made, this kind of V and stopped on a dime. I don't know how it did that. How does it do that? How does he do that? No, they may not necessarily say anything about it because we have this weird taboo with talking about UFOs and stuff. But doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to look into it. And yeah, they put the shit in the black budget. They were going to, yeah, of course. I'm not shocked by that at all. During World War II, you had these things called Foo Fighters. These little balls of sorts that would follow behind the aircraft. Now, Germans thought they were the United States. The United States thought they were Germans. Neither one understood what these things were. Once we dropped the nuclear bomb, once we started nuclear testing, these things showed up. A case can be made that these things were here before, like you're looking through historical records and stuff like that. You have these paintings with UFOs flying in the air. But when there started to be military occurrences, meaning soldiers saying, oh my God, there's something here. It's after we dropped the bomb. It was after the nuclear war. After we dropped the nuclear weapon. It was almost like it sent a beacon into space or something. Those things are showing up. So, I'm going to open this up. I don't know how many people are here. I'm curious. I have 33 people here at 4:40 in the morning. Why are you people here? Why are you people here? Yeah, what's going on, guys? It's about UFOs and all the theories on the disappearing budget money, and even Congress doesn't know where it's going, and how Area 51 people, yeah, that is fascinating, right? I used to be in this camp of, throw open the books, tell the public, fuck it, let's do it. And then I became more cynical. And I've seen people fleeing a war zone, flooding into Europe, and Europe freaking out over other human beings who needs them. And understand that there's a difference in culture. I understand that some of these people are maybe on the religious side. I understand all that. Fair enough. Fair enough. But they're in need. And people who are in war zones aren't necessarily going to be the greatest of situations that these people are coming out of. The United States have even made the choice to not necessarily take many of these people, even though you can make a case that the United States was responsible for a lot of what's taking place in Syria, since we were funding terrorist organizations to undermine and destabilize that government. I am more terrified of us. And the question becomes, what happens? Let me say it this way. If the government wanted to expose that information, if they wanted to expose it, do you expose it in a big flashy speech, or do you inject a little bit at a time where you're titrating information to the public to get the public exposed to the idea? So NASA says, hey, we found these little microbes on the moon. Oh my God, we found microbes on the moon. Who the fuck knew? Who knew there would be microbes on the moon? Like, these little bits of information that slowly titrate the information into the public consciousness. So the public sees all these movies about aliens. The public gets a little bit more familiar with it. You have certain people who get certain information, who puts out this kind of content. Some of it may be true, some of it may be false, whatever, but at the very least you have this thing that's getting into the public consciousness of, this is potential, this is a potential, this is a potential. And now you have this thing with the Pentagon is saying, yes, we have this particular thing in our budget. Or they just so happen to find this particular thing in the budget. Now, mind you, France had opened their files, Britain had opened their files. And there were stuff that came out in those things with pallets and stuff was talking about people they were chasing, or these beings or these ships that they were chasing. The thing in Turkey. Man, the thing in Turkey is mind-blowing. It was out there, man. The information is there. The information is there. People have a cognitive bias against it. I've heard many interesting theories on why the speed of the technological advancements is UFO related. I mean, who knows? But in terms of human history, the last 70 years has been insane. Yeah. It's been this hyper technological advancement, like back to back to back. We as human beings haven't necessarily caught up from a cognitive standpoint of the technology. Agreed, man. Or if ideology of race is in direct opposition to the status quo, maybe you just keep it quiet. Maybe it's easier to be rich than to be moral. It is easier to be rich than moral. That's the problem. We shouldn't allow it. That's the problem. Are we out there, or is it all a hologram? Lorums. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You exist. You function. You are. You're something. That's all that matters. Unacknowledged. That's the title. Oh, yeah. Marta K. Yeah. That's Stephen Greer's thing. Unacknowledged. He has a few books, though. Like, Stephen Greer's thing is this idea that consciousness is this kind of principle of the universe, that ultimately the thing that we interact with is consciousness, whether we realize it or not. That all of this is just some kind of construct of consciousness. That the medium of communication between other beings and other races is consciousness. Something that we ourselves as human beings don't necessarily pay attention to, or we've forgotten. Our other senses are so loud, so it blocks out this faculty of ours. But when they do studies on this stuff, like Pear Labs, Princeton, I can't think of the name of it, but it's Princeton's lab, Stanford Research Institute. Yeah, they found that this interesting thing of this kind of psi function in human beings, this idea of sending thoughts and thought communication and everything else. Stephen Greer goes with the idea that you can project your thoughts in this way, and that much of the communication that people are experiencing is not necessarily a physical communication. It's this kind of this aspect of self, like an OBE type thing, where these beings are interacting with you on this non-physical level. It's interesting. I mean, as somebody who's done the OBE thing, yes, there's reality to it. So it's like, once you get one stone in that reality box, can you take the extra step to the other stone? Without having that first stone, everything that he's saying sounds off the wall. So this is kind of one of those reality frame things. I am in the camp that believes this, just because I've had the OBE thing, and I've had this kind of I've mentioned before, this kind of spirit guide stuff. So I understand where he's coming from when he's making this case. Whether or not Stephen Greer is an interesting guy, I say it that way. It's just he's so full of himself. Like, when he's having these speeches, it's 30 minutes of an hour speeches, him saying how fucking awesome he is. And it's like, oh, dude, just yes, I understand, you're fucking awesome, you're great, you're awesome, you're fucking awesome. Let's get to the content. Like, get to the content. Let's see. As if we were under alien martial law. I don't think it's under martial law. I think human beings seek to advantage themselves magnificently, and that's what they've done. And they've had other human beings that fell for it with the ideas of right and wrong and morality and everything else, and they just submit to the power structure the way it is, as if this power structure is somehow right and just. Massive levels of income inequality, and you getting all of the resources to one faction of the world. It's like, that's fucking insane. That's insanity. I don't think it's martial law. I think if you allow somebody to take advantage of you, they take advantage of you. And that's essentially what the 99% has been allowing. So yeah. Physics still has to be underlying any prospect. Definitely the supernatural doesn't exist in nature. Yes, I agree. But it depends on what you mean by supernatural, if that makes sense. Like, those things are still natural processes. Humanity just probably doesn't understand it. Science is so recent. Like, our prying into the universe and our prying into trying to understand this stuff, it's a new phenomena. It's recent. I think people who say, I believe in science, I think those people are stupid. Like, science changes. It's what are you saying? It's like, I believe in a hammer. It pries into the universe. It investigates. It tries to understand the world itself. It's just a paradigm of understanding things. Now, that paradigm, however, expands. So let me explain what I mean. It expands. It's one of those things that you can look at what the paradigm is and say to yourself, okay, in 100, 200, 300 years, certainly the same paradigm is not going to exist. If you look at Newtonian physics as opposed to quantum physics, those things are fucking different. Like, the laws underlying those things even look different. So, yes, there may be some underlying principle that bring those things together. But, you know, I'm imagining a Newtonian physicist wagging his finger at somebody else who's saying, yeah, I don't think the world works this way. It expands, it grows. What does it look like in 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years? And it's like you try to extrapolate that, and that becomes fucking fascinating. The catch is, there's all sorts of things that you're probably going to be able to do with our understanding of the world as it expands and as it grows, that we may not necessarily see from where we are. It's a false argument to say that if something else was out there, that it couldn't get here because our laws of physics says it can't get here. Our laws of physics expand and our laws of physics grow. The honest answer is saying, I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't know. And I would make a case that says, in 1,000 years, will we have the capacity to get from point A to point B in a different way? When somebody realized, hey, we can send, these Morse code, did anybody envision we'll be able to use a cell phone and send a signal from one side of the planet to the other? Things change. Things change. Those things grow. That's my only point. Anything we don't understand. From where I come from, magic and science are one and the same. Thor! Thor! Right on, Devon. Right on. Moni J, I got interested in reincarnation around 5th grade. Been studying what can be studied since then. Decade later, there does seem to be some developed patterns in telling in the stories. I'm fascinated by it. Why can't I believe in evolving science? That doesn't make me stupid. What? Why can't I believe in evolving science? That doesn't make me stupid. I don't know what you mean. Maybe I miscommunicated something. No, what I mean is, it's like somebody says, I believe in science. And you have some people who say, I don't believe in anything other than what science tells me. And it's like, but you understand that science evolves just like everything else. It's not a fixed thing. It's something that grows and expands. I'm saying those people who are fixed in their degree of or their view of this stuff, I think they're insane. I think they're crazy. Science grows. The reincarnation thing is fascinating to me. So one of the guys in Virginia, UVA, who was a professor, in fact, he was head of psychology. He was studying reincarnation. He would go and talk to kids who remembered who they were in a past life, and he would try to correlate that stuff. He had thousands of kids, even publishing his findings in scientific journals. Now, of course, they have no paradigm to understand those. Zero paradigm. Zero paradigm. But the honest opinion on this stuff is just, I don't know. But because, they're physicists, they have this idea, this religious belief that physics, the physical world, is all there is. So people bringing into these other ideas, it just doesn't apply. Doesn't apply. I'm more open-minded on this. I've had enough weirdness in my life where I'm more open-minded on this. Let's see. Oh, I still dreamt these dreams for a long time after. Moni, I used to have, when I was younger, when I was 19, I've told this before, when I was 19, I came across this concept. I used to have weird stuff happen to me as a kid in general. Like, having something walk into the room and sit on the bed. It scared the shit out of me as a kid. Like, you're in bed and you just feel something firmly sit on your bed and you're like, oh my god, there's something sitting on my bed. It's freaking me out. Or as you got on later and you had this I came across this idea. Sylvia Brown. Yes, Sylvia Brown. She used to talk about spirit guides on Montel Williams. And I was always of this mindset of, if it's real, I should be able to prove it. Even if I'm proving it only to myself. Like, even if it's just, something that I myself pry into. Is there a reality to it? And I want to be able to demonstrate that there's a reality to it. In this case, though, she was like, look, there's a way to prove it. There's a way to identify. There's a way to get in contact with your particular guide. And I said, great. This is something that I can prove. I can either nail down one way or the other. And prove is too strong because ultimately, if it doesn't work, that's not me saying, and I can't, that's not disproving that the thing exists, that's just disproving I was able to touch it or come in contact with it. But I wanted to at least try it. I wanted to give it a benefit of the doubt. For months, I tried this. Now, and the reason why it took months wasn't because, you know, it just didn't work and I just kept plugging away at it. Slightly the opposite. I would do the meditative stuff, and I would feel myself like I was plugged into an electrical outlet, and it would freak me out. It freaked me out. I was in a fear zone. I couldn't get out of the fear part. And so I would keep at it, like I was inching my way through the fear part. And one morning, I'm laying in bed, and I feel like I'm plugged into the electrical outlet, wide awake. And I say, fuck it, let it happen. I just let it happen. I didn't necessarily break myself out the state. I didn't necessarily push my way out of it. I just let it happen. And I feel something is in the room. And I say, hello. And I hear a woman's voice sternly say back to me, hello. And at this point, I'm immensely excited. I'm not scared in the least. I am excited as nobody's business, because I've been trying this for months, and finally something happens, and I'm flooded with this thing of thousands of questions, and at that point you're just breaking the state. The state is gone. You're done. But the very next night, I come in contact with someone who says, my name is, I can't remember the name, I'm your expositor, and I've seen this woman multiple times throughout the course of my life. So the idea of reincarnation and everything else, I started to have spontaneous lucid dreams and all sorts of odd stuff. But one of the things I remember I ended up having that was mind-blowing to me was I was in a dream state where I was awake. I found myself in a completely different person, and I'm not terrified is the wrong word. I had this angst about what was taking place because I felt like something bad was about to happen. And I'm walking down the street. And as I'm walking down the street, I said to myself, I don't want to experience this. I don't want to experience this. And I found myself over the dream scene, just essentially looking at this particular thing from a third-person perspective. And the guy who I was inhabiting gets shot in the face. And I'm looking at this like, what the fuck? Why am I watching this? And B, what am I supposed to get out of this particular thing? What am I supposed to get out of seeing this? This stuff gets weird, man. Like the same faculty that you're using to experience the world itself that we consider to be physical matter reality, in the same way creates your dream states. And at some point, you kind of have to ask this question of, well, wait a minute. Are these things similar to one another? When people talk about being out of body, are they actually getting out of body, or are they shifting their consciousness in a way where in any state that you're in, your consciousness creates a certain vehicle for you? In your dream states, whether you realize it or not, you have an argument with your wife, you go outside, you smoke a cigarette, you smoke a doobie, you take a drink, whatever. You talk to your neighbor, you go to the store, you come back home. Your dream state has essentially created a body, in which case you're looking through third person or first person perspective of that body, even though you're supposed to be the entirety of the entire state. And you are interacting with other people that you yourself have created of your own imagination, and you're interacting with them. You're supposed to be the creator of this entire thing. And you shift back into your normal waking state. It's like nobody looks at this and says, well, wait a minute, are these things very similar? Is the same faculty that's being used? Is this some kind of game space where if you pry into the reality of it, then you'll get a certain answer, but before you pry into that reality of that particular thing, that answer doesn't necessarily exist, because the only thing that exists is consciousness, and you're interacting with things with your consciousness, creating this construct. For all I know, this is a data stream. I would make the case that nobody knows what this is. Physicists may pry into what it means to be for physical matter reality, where they say that this is what this particular substance is, this is what this atom is, this is what this thing is. They don't necessarily understand how the entirety of that stuff fits together. But as they pry into it, they start to understand elements of it, if that makes sense. But the totality of the thing is a fucking mystery. It's a fucking mystery. How do you know what your reality is until you get outside of that reality? meaning people who are having these OBE experiences, the psi function, all of these weird things, be it UFOs, all of this stuff should be on the table. All of this stuff should be up for grabs in regards to discussion and conversation. I don't understand how it's not. How can you have an actual view of reality if you don't necessarily take into all these aspects of reality? Even if this stuff is just cognitive, this aspect of self. Some of those guys, one of the, I think, I can't think of his name. He's a French guy. UFO researcher. Vallée. Jacques Vallée. I think that's what it is. He comes up with this thing saying, well, we don't even know if those things are ships at all. We have no idea if those things are ships. You're making assumptions that those things are ships. How do you know that those things aren't necessarily beings that interact with our particular space every so often, meaning they pop in and out of our particular existence? As they pop into our existence, they appear to be these solid objects of sorts that interact with us. But at the same token, they have the capacity to interact in non-physical ways. This is some of the weird shit that these people are talking about. But I'm saying that this is weird shit that should be on the table, because for the most part, we don't know. We don't know. I am fascinated by this conversation. Like, I love these conversations where these guys are, yeah, I love these conversations. I think these conversations are fascinating. I really do. I wish I had an experience like this. I have an open mind, but I have never used anything like this, so lean, skeptical. But LSD is a hell of a drug, and anything seems possible with the human mind. I love that. Tabitha Enriquez, cosmic consciousness. Yes. Moni G, they kind of morphed into bad people. I had to help people escape to get away. The state of the powers in need of to control people to get away, and I was some kind of guide, if you will. I have nightmares, not dreams, that I recall anyway. I have no power when sleeping via temp. See, I'm the opposite. I am a beast when I sleep. I am a beast. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean that in this kind of epic way. I like I said, I used to have lucid dreams back to back to back, like where you're in this thing, you're aware that you're dreaming, and you have this thing of, I'm in two places. I have a consciousness that's here, and in this thing I have a body and everything else, and I'm interacting with things in this particular space, and yet I'm attached to something else, somewhere else. I used to have these, at some point my dreams weren't nightmares. Like, it became this thing where I became more I was less afraid. I guess I'll put it that way. I was less afraid. One of the last dream that I had that freaked me out to no end was a UFO dream. It freaked me out to no end. I was laying in bed, and this was during the time where I started studying this stuff a lot, because I kept the same. My reasoning was similar. If it's something that's real, I should be able to demonstrate the fact that it's real. Meaning, if Stephen Greer is right, and if this stuff is based on this kind of cosmic, this consciousness and everything else, then you should be able to contact these things in the same way that you can contact a guide or something else. And so my thing was, all right, give him a chance. See if there's something to it. And I freaked myself out like nobody's business. Like, it's hard to get across. Yeah, I freaked myself out. So I am in bed, I'm lying down, and I hear something upstairs. And I get up, and my wife asks if I'm okay. I'm like, yeah, I hear something upstairs, and I take a few steps. I think I take like 2 steps, and I'm frozen. I can't move. Can't move. I am completely frozen. And at that point, I start to, I'm slightly freaking out. I don't necessarily understand what's going on. And my wife said, babe, are you okay? And I said, I'm frozen. I can't move. And I fall back to the bed. And as I fall back to the bed, I hear something coming down the steps. And I am terrified. I'm terrified. I've never been more terrified in my life. In my head, I hear myself screaming, no. And I immediately wake up. It freaked me the fuck out. It freaked me the fuck out. I woke up ashamed. That's how terrified I was. Like it's. I've always kind of had this attitude of, if there was a craft that landed, I would say space brother, and I would hug whatever the fuck comes out that craft. Now, that's one thing to say, you know, what you say with your mouth, fair enough. That's big talk, big guy. when you're in the situation where you're frozen and you can't do anything, you feel something coming down the stairs, and in your head, oh my God, I can't move, and something is coming downstairs, and I don't know what's coming downstairs, and I don't know what's going to come through that door. Yeah, it freaks you out. There's no situation where you're being paralyzed and you think that's awesome. Zero. I woke up ashamed by this, by the way, and I was immensely ashamed. My feeling was, oh my God, I was that terrified. I was like, why was I that terrified? And beyond not being that terrified, in some honest, interesting way, I mean, I was kind of making this point of, I want to know whether this is real or not. I want to know whether this is real or not. Whether that's my subconscious fucking with me or not. Ultimately, that has consequences. Like, if this is true, if you're saying, I want to know whether this is real, how do you think that's going to take place? Do you think that that's going to be something that comes up and gives you ice cream and says, hey, by the way, I'm an alien. Just wanted you to know that. Or is it, oh my God, something's coming through that door and I can't move? Which one is it? Now, when you're looking at contact literature, it's the latter. Oh my God, something is in the room, I can't move. I was ashamed by this. I was ashamed by this. I shouldn't have, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. Now, here's the catch. A few months later, I said to myself, I was like, I don't want this to end in this way. Like, I was so ashamed by this experience. I said to myself, this needs to happen again. I didn't care whether it was real. That was kind of besides the point. It was, I was that terrified, and that's embarrassing to be that terrified. That's the first point. But B, it's like you're terrified for something that you yourself wanted to know whether it was real or not. And even if this was your subconscious kind of filling that in, you're still terrified. It's like this is somewhat of a moot point. Whether the experience was real or not, the experience was real. Ultimately, you experienced something that you yourself thought was taking place in that particular reality, in that particular state, that dream state. Well, for all intents and purposes, there's not that much of a difference between your dream state and your regular reality. If you experience something, you experience something. The difference between physical matter reality and your dream state is just continuity. If your dream state had any level of continuity, I mean, if you were having the same dream over and over and over again, you would be not able to disassociate between what's real and what's not. I'm just making this point. In that state, that shit was real. Like, I had that particular experience. I was in that particular place. I thought something was coming through that door, and it was freaking me out. Whether it was real in a larger context or not, at this point, it's besides the point. Besides the point to me. A few months later, I had the same dream. Exact same thing that happened again. This time, I was far more brave, and I was proud of myself at that point. In bed, I wake up. My wife is laying beside me, and this was the problem with this. Everything in it was the exact same. There was no way to disassociate between what was that dream state versus what was my actual room, because both of those things were exactly the same. It was like you couldn't tell the difference. You were lucid, so everything was the same. And I'm in bed, and I wake up, and I hear something upstairs. And I try to move, and I can't move. This time, it's not even getting up. I can't move. I'm frozen. And I hear something coming down the stairs. And I start to panic. Like, I feel myself starting to panic. Like, it's this thing where you see yourself just kind of go from 0 to 1,000 in regards to you being freaked out. And I hear my wife tell me, babe, you know, calm down. This is what you said you wanted. Calm down. You can't do anything about it anyway. Calm down. And I thought to myself, my wife is being immensely reasonable right now. Now, she was my girlfriend at the time, but I was like, she's being uber reasonable. Why is she so calm in the situation that I'm freaking the fuck out? And I think to myself, I was like, but she's right. She's absolutely right. I can't move. I can't do anything about it. This was something I said I wanted. And I was immensely embarrassed the last time this took place. And I talked myself down. Calm down. Just calm down. Just calm the fuck down. Just calm down. It's okay. Just calm down. It's okay. Just calm down. It's okay. Just calm down. And I hear something coming downstairs. I hear it coming downstairs. Our bedroom was downstairs, just the way our house was set up, or the apartment was set up. And as it comes downstairs, I hear something in the room. Now, at this point, I'm frozen. Like, I can't move. I can't even turn my head. I can't even move my eyes. So ultimately, I'm frozen in one place. And I'm talking myself down, saying, just keep calm. Just keep calm. Just keep calm. It's okay. Keep calm. And for the most part, I have a restrained calm, if that makes sense. It's like, it's this, you're holding on to the edges. I am calm. And when something gets into the room, I hear scurrying around the room. Now, at this point, my natural curiosity kicks in. Like, I am phenomenally curious. Like, and my curiosity gets the better of my fear in many cases. And this was one of those cases where the curiosity was, well, shit, it's here now. I want to see what it is. What is it? I want to know what it is. What is it? And I hear talking back and forth saying he's curious. He wants to know. He's interested. He's curious. And my curiosity, the more curious I got, and the less fearful I got, the more I was able to move. Meaning, I started to be able to lift my head up as the fear kind of went away. So as I was like, I need to know who this is. I want to see what this is. Shit, they're here. I want to see what this is. What is this? And as I poke my head up, and I turn my head and I look, and there's something staring directly at me, and it is a black human female. And I immediately think to myself, bullshit. Like, bullshit. If this is my subconscious fucking with me, whatever. Bullshit. Bullshit. I wake up in my bed. I am proud of myself because I'm like, all right. You kept your shit together. You stayed calm. Barely, you stayed calm. And then I started thinking to myself, why was my wife so calm in this situation? And then I started thinking, what's that my wife telling me to calm the fuck down? It's fucking weird, man. Fucking weird. Tabitha Enriquez, Jamal, sometimes your 420s freak me out. Good. Good. He's talking about an alien encounter. Putin paid Hillary. No, I'm talking about an encounter where my subconscious was fucking with me. At last, I think it was 2015, I started studying this stuff. I don't know how I got kicked into it, but I started studying it a little bit more. And I realized that the encounters with my guides when I was younger ran in parallel in many respects to the encounters that people were having in that literature, the UFO literature. And the wild part about it is oftentimes it was immensely similar, but oftentimes the people didn't make the connection between the two. Like, you would have somebody who's in one camp or somebody who's in the other camp, and not necessarily making those two things. I didn't go from the UFO camp. I never really paid too much attention to it. I started, I would read some of everything, so I would read books prior, but I hit that from the standpoint of a guide thing. My paradigm of the world was more New Agey at that point. And then somewhere along the way, it became far less New Agey and more ambiguous, more into this camp of what I don't know. Like you interact with something, that particular something that, in my case, she came across as a female, an older woman, over and over and over again, multiple times. And you interact with this thing, so there's a continuity to the thing that you're interacting with. The person knows you, the person interacts with you, etc., etc. But you started asking the second fundamental question of, well, wait a minute, this is subjective reality. How do I know that that person is who that person is? It doesn't have to be a woman. It doesn't have to be anything. Shape the reality. It's not physical reality at this point. In which case, you start asking the next question. I understand that my paradigm of the world is understood through, this idea of guides and everything else. But is it possible that the interaction is based on my paradigm of the world, and that paradigm of the world is not necessarily accurate? Meaning, if it was a Christian, it would come across as these kind of angelic things. If it was an atheist, it would come across as something else, etc., etc. Like, your interaction with the thing, you yourself, the investment of who you are, your paradigm of the world is creating that particular reality of it. So Tom Campbell, NASA physicist, the guy who became somewhat of a guru, a New Age guru, his paradigm of the world is kind of scientific, methodological view of the world. And so he's looking at this stuff as a larger consciousness system. It's a machine of sorts, with consciousness being the intermediary into that machine, the interaction, saying you don't have a body, you don't have anything, you just have a consciousness. That consciousness projects that particular reality in the same way that your consciousness projects the dream state that you're in. Everybody being plugged into one similar data stream. So when people look at it, everybody seems to be saying the same thing, with rule sets, making sure that the world is not a funhouse world. That particular reality, for the most part, stays stable based on a rule set that's associated with that reality. If you look at something and you know something is in a particular place, when you go back to that place, that something's going to be there with a probabilistic chance of it being changed, altered, there in the same spot, etc., etc., etc. Like, all these things are just rule sets. All of these things are probabilistic engines that take place. Tom Campbell is fucking interesting. He's fascinating by this. Dogmatic. It's dogmatic, but he's fascinating. My point to this is reality can be far more interesting and strange than what we think it is. And in my case, I was fascinated by this topic, and I still am fascinated by this topic. I'm fascinated by it on a few points. If these guys are saying, yes, these guys are here, fair enough. The moment that you said that these guys are here, these other people who said that, well, we've had contact with XYZ are going to say, see, we told you. Now, some of these people are going to be lying. Some of these people may actually be telling the truth. But this is a fascinating topic. I'll just say it that way. It's a fascinating topic. I'll leave it at that. I mean, because otherwise I'll babble like nobody's business on it. Let's see. They would never tell you anything important. That is a true maximum. Good point. Good point. Divine me, aliens and spirits, yes. Divine me, most of us here have. He was talking about alien encounter. Yes, maybe. So I don't know what it was. Like, I was recounting a dream state that I was in. Like, these two dream states that freaked me the fuck out. I was studying the UFO stuff. And in the same way that when I came across this idea of spirit guides, I was like, I want to know whether this exists. I want to know whether this is true. I started studying the same thing. In my head, it's not enough for you to tell me something for me to believe. Like, it's like if somebody tells you something, you either believe it or you don't. But in both situations, like, what situation are you in? Like, why do you want to be in a situation where you're just in a situation of belief? I want to know. That's a difference. I wanted to know. I want to have direct experience. Now, in that case, I was trying to make this point that what does direct experience look like? Can we define what direct experience looks like? And when you look at many of these encounters look like OBE encounters. Like, it doesn't look like it's physical experience encounters. But just because it's not necessarily a physical matter reality experience encounter, it doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't necessarily contact. That makes sense. I'm talking about some of the experiences that people talk about that they're having. Now, I think this stuff is fascinating. I think this stuff is fascinating. Absolutely. Let's see. This is a super difficult area to navigate. Yes, it's true. You honestly aren't doing badly. Yeah, this is not the easiest. I mean, because you're stuck in a situation of just not knowing. Like, you're stuck in a situation of not knowing. You're perpetually in the not know. Like, we're trying to figure this out. And you have some people who go from this non-physical part. I don't like dogma on this. Like, I don't like people being so dogmatic of this is how this is. Because it's like, how do you know that? How do you know that? And this includes, you know, new agey people and all this other stuff. I like the dialogue. I like these ideas of this postulating what it could be and what this might be. Even what our purpose might be. That's assuming that you have a purpose at all. I mean, if this is projected from some other perspective or some other context, the whole concept of God comes back into the picture. Just not God in the way that we're thinking of God. God is a fucking machine. Yeah, man, I find this stuff interesting. The spirit guy thing is something I could talk about for fucking ever. I love that. That's one of the most interesting topics to me. And when people talk about UFOs and stuff like that, some of the stuff they're just saying, man, that stuff blurs magnificently. I mean, ultimately, you're talking about people having these experiences that are mind-blowing experiences that run somewhat counter to the way our fixed point of view and the way our reality goes. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Von Tempe works in any dream going in your head. The idea is remind yourself to be aware of what's going on, empowered enough to take the reins. Yeah, it's that's not the easiest thing in the world to do, man. Like, because oftentimes you don't know you're dreaming. That's the other property of the dream state that I find to be fascinating. Like, things that are so fucking off the wall. You could be sitting there eating with your mom, and a camel walks in, and the camel nods, takes one of his, how's it going today? It's going pretty good, Mr. Camel. And the camel can walk out and take a smoke. And you and your mom just sit there and you just eat like nothing just takes place, and you talk about the weather and everything else, and talk about some kind of television show. And the camel leaves them, says, all right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And he walks out the door. Everything is perfectly okay. It's like a principle of the dream state is that the people don't know they're in their dream state. They almost edit out content of reality. Like, this is an aspect of reality that you don't need to know about, so edit out this particular bit of information so you don't retain the fact that this is fucking amazing, that this just took place. That's an amazing property of a dream state. Is it possible that that property is at work in our normal life? And if it was at work, how would we know? How would we know? If the property of the dream state is that you don't necessarily know you're in a dream state, how would we know? How would we know? I'm fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by this topic. It's like, what don't you know that you don't know? It's fucking amazing topic. Fucking amazing. God is the first supercomputer, Jamal. No, I don't mean it that way. I'm talking about Tom Campbell made this point that he called it the larger consciousness system. Tom Campbell. He when he's out of body and he's interacting with these non-physical states and everything else, and he's doing research. The guy's a scientist. He's doing research in these states, and they were doing research into out-of-body states in pairs using Robert Monroe and this type of stuff. Now, the reason I say when people come up with this idea of reality, oftentimes the stuff conforms to who those people are. So, this person is a Christian, this person sees an angel, this other person is this kind of new agey thing, so this person sees a spirit guide. Tom Campbell is interacting with these non-physical realities from the standpoint of a physicist. So in his mind, is it possible that he is injecting who he is into his understanding of that reality? Meaning that non-physical reality itself conforms to the idea of the person who's looking at the non-physical reality. Meaning, we don't know what this shit is. Like, it becomes, this thing is off the table in regards to fully understanding what it is. All of these people look at it, all these people come back with some slightly different view of what this is, because ultimately you can't necessarily put your hands on it in the way that we put our hands on physical matter reality. But Tom Campbell will make the point that it's a larger consciousness system. It's a matrix of sorts. That you have all these other physical matter realities, or these other realities themselves that a human being can tune themselves into using consciousness as being a tuning fork to float between each one of these dimensions. So you end up in another dimension, you're physical in that dimension, your consciousness is making that particular physicality take place in the same way that's making this physicality take place. You're attenuated to this particular physical matter reality because you're here for a particular, experience in this case. But ultimately you're not stuck here. You can attune yourself into different states. Robert Monroe would call this stuff different focus points. Like you can, these different areas of experience or these areas of existence. Out-of-body research is interesting. Let me just say that way. Out-of-body research is fucking interesting. It is a acid trip like nobody's business. Let's see. Bullshit, man. I love the whole left-right brain competition we have. Effectively, two different people with two different understandings of the whole and how that works in dreams, retaining information. Yeah, that's the other thing, man. Like, so people having lucid dream states in a way that your brain doesn't retain that information. And there's been some of the guys who's been researching this or looking into this, some of these OBEs, will make this point that oftentimes when people come back to their dreams in the same way that you don't remember your dreams oftentimes, the brain is having a difficult time reintegrating that information into us. Like, so a person will go out, they will have OBE, that OBE is a copy of the individual. Like some of this stuff gets so weird, it's hard to get it across. But it makes sense from a computer standpoint. If you are data and you instantiated a copy of yourself, well, that person is still you. For all intents and purposes, that person is you. It's just another copy of you. Now, the experiences that person have will be different, starting from the point at which you were copied, but fundamentally, that person is you. He's making the point that the OBE is essentially a copy, it's a projected copy of the individual into this kind of slightly different or variation of the reality space. This stuff gets weird, man. This stuff gets weird as they're trying to explain why people, explaining how consciousness is attenuated to our particular reality frame of reference. Does that make sense? That gets weird. The consciousness research is fascinating. That noetic studies. Cannabis temporarily fills receptors in your brain, but it will not last if you stop smoking. Vod Temp. Allah and I are in a fight. What's EDMR? How do I research? I don't know what EDMR is. I don't know what that one is. Gage Castro. I had PTSD and found Allah. Good for fucking you. Good job. Good job. Try the EDMR for post-traumatic stress. It works wonders for some. Is that the thing where they introduce the person to the like they try to reintroduce the stimuli, to try to reintegrate that, to integrate that experience into the person. Like something traumatic happens, that particular person or that brain, that the person's consciousness attaches itself to the brain. It stores that particular memory, and yet it stores it in this kind of tortured way. And so the person re-experiences this thing over and over and over again, and just as a brain normal way of trying to retain certain things from the experience. Like allowing the person to engage in that particular stimuli over and over and over again, to it's almost like rewire the brain in the way that it's experiencing that experience. If we send people over there to fight, we should take care of those people. Hands down. Hands down. There should be no situation where a person, the United States government uses those people to go somewhere and murder other people, and then they get back to the country and they just kind of leave them to their devices. That's fucked up. Rebel Cage Rattler, got the whole Starfleet tonight. Yes, I do. We're talking about UFOs. I couldn't think of anything else. I didn't have a UFO to put on the thing. So yes, I got the whole fleet. The entire crew. Stand up. Yeah. 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 Pretty much. Oh, I see. It is eye movement desensitization. Moni G, the only true knowledge is truly knowing. The more you know, the less you know. Agreed. This is like you learn more shit, realizing you have more questions. Let's see. I can't see Worf much. Worf is... Oh, right. I forgot. That's your guy. I forgot. That's your guy. I'll put him right here. There you go. There you go. There you go. Let's put Riker on the side. There you go. Divine Mead. Well, we did help Germany, and they became our top allies in the first country, I think, to pay off the World War I and II debt. Yeah, I mean, mind you, we forgave a lot of their debt also, but yeah. But yeah, they became our ally because we needed them to be a bulwark against Russia. So yeah. Hi, Worfy baby. There you go, Rebel. There you go. There you go. That's funny. No problem. It does great with phobias, but there's deep-seated traumas. Some people do it a few times. They don't need it again. Some more. They need to take no real time. Oh, you're talking about the therapy for the post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah. Rebel Cage, you got here after an... yes, got here late. How dare you not be up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm starting at 4:20. The reason why I did this at 4:20, somebody was like, dude, it's almost 4:20. It's like, oh, let's fuck it. Let's have a 4:20 at 4:20. Let's talk about UFOs. Let's do a 4:20 at 4:20. I know what I'm talking about. I've been there. Investigate George Takei. Investigate George Takei. What's George Takei doing? What does he need investigating for? Why are you guys hating on George Takei? George Takei, man, is a... I was about to say a hero, but he's not a hero. It's just George Takei. Best trip I had, changed my life, my perspective, my whole world. I would have bought the whole sheet if I knew. Alien collusion. Oh, George Takei is working on alien collusion. That's funny. Poncho. All right, I'm gonna show this, but he's just grabbing dick. That's what George Takei. Have you seen Captain Kirk's roast? William Shatner, the roast of William Shatner. Look this up. It is one of the funniest fucking things you will see in your life. And it is the most debaucherous, depraved thing that you would think that these people on Star Trek would be doing. But it is so funny. It's so funny. William Shatner, George, all of these guys, Takei, all these guys are joking Shatner big time, including Uhura, and Spock wasn't there, but everybody else was there. And including, if I'm not mistaken, they had like Lisa Lampanelli, like some just dirty, dirty jokes that, like at William Shatner's expense. And he said, he was talking about Takei, and he said, for 50 years, you've been trying to suck my cock. It's the funniest shit ever. You have to see the context. It's so fucking funny. They go at William Shatner like nobody's business. They go at William Shatner. They go at William Shatner. When William Shatner get his chance, the old man, he gives as good as he got. It was really good. Rebel Cage Redler. Yes, I thought it was hilarious. It was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. I could not believe that William Shatner. It's shocking to see it. I think that's the thing. It's like, holy shit, these guys are on Star Trek, and this is the stuff they're talking so dirty. It's awesome. They're talking so dirty. They're talking so dirty. It's awesome. 6 month, 1 year of love, and nobody or nothing can get me down. Fucking A, Moni G. Fucking A. I'll say one more time, then I'll drop it. Watch Unacknowledged on Netflix. You will learn things that you didn't want or realize about UFOs and the power of Area 51 and Dark Gov. Divine Mead, I've listened to what's his name's lecture on this, Stephen Greer's lectures on this. I've seen hours of Stephen Greer's lectures on this, so I know it's in Unacknowledged. I know it's in Unacknowledged. Let me say it this way. Your capacity to believe in something oftentimes is this thing on stones. Like if I can get from one stone to the next, if I can even see that next stone, then I'm going to consider that to be credible and plausible. Like, so the whole spirit guide thing, the whole new agey thing, to some degree, I can go with the idea, this idea of consciousness and everything else. I share the idea, or I share the belief. So fair enough. But this belief is kind of informed through my own experiences. It's not simply just belief. It's, you know, if the belief is wrong, then the belief was brought about by an experience. It's not just this kind of in your head thing. The point I'm getting at is, like, I can see a particular stone. When I'm talking to my wife about this stuff, I know my wife is like, oh my God, he's lost it. But my wife, either she's going to take my word for it, or she's just going to disbelieve me. Both of those situations are exactly the same. She's in the exact same spot. You don't know either one. Either one, in both cases, you don't know. You didn't experience it. But at the very least, if you can see a stone, like, so if my wife was able to, we went to the Monroe Institute, and we were allowed to have one of the days, it was like a day-long seminar of New Age meditation, that type of stuff, and they put you through one of their sessions in regards to their meditative sessions, and into one of their chambers and stuff like that, just like try to have OBs, that type of stuff. If she would have had an experience, at the very least, she would have said, okay, I see where you're coming from. I can get to the next stone when you're telling me something. So part of what Stephen Greer says, I can say, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. You got me on some of this. But some of those stones are mighty far away. Like, some of those stones it's like, it's so far away that you're stuck in a situation of either taking Greer's word for it or not. And I'm just trying to make this point. In both cases, you're stuck in the same spot. Now, to be fair to Greer, his testimonies are amazing. When Greer has all those people getting up, giving testimony about what's taking place, what they've seen, what they've done, what they've experienced, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. It is fucking fascinating to hear that stuff. I've listened to hours of that stuff. And from one person to the next, you think to yourself, there's no way all of these people are lying. These people have nothing to get out this deal, and ultimately this makes, they get nothing out of this. They get nothing out of this. So, yeah, unacknowledged is not bad. It's just there's certain parts where it's like, there's certain parts where Stephen Greer didn't put in unacknowledged. The aliens reproductive, like, yeah, some of the stuff gets out there, man. When Greer is talking about this thing where aliens, where the government has constructed aliens, and those aliens are going into people's houses, abducting people, and putting the fear of God in people in order to keep their secrets, and they have like all the stagecraft and stuff like that, and you're like, it's like, okay, dude, it's like at a certain point, it's a difficult argument. What I mean by that is, it takes so many leaps. Like, you have to get people over the hurdle of something is out there. That's the first point. That something can get here. That's the third point. Second point. Third point is that that thing, whatever that thing is interested in the people themselves. The fourth or fifth point is that the government is framing people in this in order to kind of blackmail these beings from elsewhere, and using that blackmail to scare the shit out of people in order to kind of put this country into this kind of world war footing with beings that are not really at war with us. Like, it just takes a lot of leaps. That's all. The alien thing, yes, I can believe. Part of me feels like Stephen Greer is really strong on this idea of there is no threat from outside of ourselves. Like, that the only threat for us is us. We are the hostile force in this. And that anything that's coming to our shores, everything that's out there is essentially peace, love, light, and joy, and kumbaya. Now, to be fair to Greer in this particular argument, we as human beings can't use ourselves as a standard to try to evaluate what's going to be on outside of ourselves. We could be deranged, we could be irrational, we could be going through some stage from a planetary level where we're just batshit crazy, we're children beating ourselves over the heads. We don't know. We don't have any context of comparison outside of ourselves. This is all we got. Now, so Greer could be right, because we don't necessarily have a comparison to compare ourselves with. By the same token, if he has a certain ideological point of view that he believes that everything is love and light, would he try to come up with a reason why these people are saying that XYZ is taking place? Yes, he's a human being, of course. Of course. It's not that I think he's lying per se. I think he has a certain ideology. I think he may be blind to certain stuff. But this is going off the rails. I mean, this is getting into the weeds. It's kind of UFO stuff. There's LSD in controlled environments for PTSD. People, yeah, that's true. We can agree on that. I'm not saying that take everything as fact, but it does drive the conversation. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Agreed. Much like Bernie Sanders, just because he's pro-Israel doesn't mean he's factually correct, or we should blindly follow him. Divine meat. Wow, putting Israel into this conversation. Fair enough. Jamal, about how your wife takes some of this stuff. You say she loves you and accepts you, and you're crazy thinking you her crazy diamond pink Floyd. Jamal, about how your wife takes some of this stuff. You say she loves you and accepts that you're crazy thinking. You're her crazy diamond pink Floyd. It's funny. That's funny. She, the UFO thing freaked her out. Like it's one thing to say this kind of new agey stuff and spirit guides and all this other stuff. That stuff is, by the time her and I met, a lot of that stuff had been blunted off in me. Like when I hit 30, for whatever reason, that stuff tended to started to ebb away. My ability to interact with that stuff. I don't know if it's just because of the way, working and everything else, but my capacity to interact in that way fell away. Now, back in when I started trying to regain that, like with doing like OBs and stuff like that, going with this idea of a conscious exit OB. I didn't want, you know, in your dream state you're aware, etc. I wanted a conscious exit, no breaking consciousness, and you float out of your body and you go dicking about. Because again, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to prove that it exists. It's one thing for somebody to say, this is my experience with it. It's another thing for you to demonstrate it yourself. She, stuff like that, that doesn't bother her. That part didn't bother her. She was okay with that. The new age stuff, again, doesn't bother her. She's okay with that. Her and I can have those conversations. Ultimately, she's not that interested in those conversations, and she gets more interested just in the minutiae of life. I get immensely bored with the minutiae of life because ultimately, stuff isn't real. It doesn't matter. It's just cultural stuff that's been lumped on, and people are, for the most part, robots in regards to the cultural stuff. I get more enamored by the larger questions. Now, the UFO stuff was different. It freaked her out. It freaked her out. Like, because it's, you know, me saying, you know, I had a guide, I have a spirit guide, etc. Her name is so and so, and there's a secondary guide, and her name is Kinzia. That type of stuff. That's okay. I mean, she could think that, well, you know, either this is a subconscious fucking with him, maybe something like that does exist. Ultimately, I don't really care because I haven't experienced it. Fair enough. The UFO stuff is different. So if I'm studying the UFO literature and I am looking at stuff where these guys are trying to make contact, like the New Age, like the C-SETIs, like the C-SETI contact, or the one that's in, is it Peru? I think it's Peru, something like that, where these guys openly go out in order to try to make contact. They go put their thoughts into the cosmos, and going with this idea that consciousness is a connecting force in this way, that if something is nearby, that those things try to make contact. And they have these videos out there where there are these light shows and everything else in the sky where these things are beaming back and responding to what's taking place in the public. And I mean, so these people send up a light, the light comes back, the craft is like blinking and flying and flittering about. Some of those videos are fascinating. But but it's too real at that point. Like, to say, you know, the whole spirit guy thing, okay, that's interesting. But if you're in a situation where you're doing meditations with this thought of, okay, I want to determine whether or not this is real or not, and you've accepted for yourself, my biggest fear was, ultimately you're going into this ambiguous, and ultimately you don't necessarily know. And if you make a choice that says, okay, I'm going to try to open this door because I'm just fucking curious about whether or not there's a door here at all. Like, it's like I'm knocking on a wall because I want to see if there's a door in this wall. Well, that's great for you, buddy. I mean, you're taking on a certain consequence, but what about her? And even if she's like, I don't believe this exists, as a human being, you're fundamentally stuck with doubt. Even if you think, I don't believe this exists, you're still fundamentally stuck with doubt. So if her husband or her boyfriend is doing a meditation, and that meditation gets a little weird when she's listening to it, like, please cut that shit off, I'm trying to get to sleep. You're freaking me out. You're freaking me out. Or just the thought of it in and of itself. Like, we're walking out one day. I give you an example. We're walking out one day. We're walking to the car to go to work. And we see something fly by. Fucking amazing speeds. And it's low enough to the ground. It's not an airplane. It's too small to be an airplane. And it goes by so fast. Well, we didn't even know if we saw it at all. Like, it's like, did you see that? Yeah, I think I saw something. Yes, I think I saw something. What the fuck did we just see? I don't know what I just saw. It looked like it was metallic. Like we were stuck in this situation of, okay, something just flew by us. And didn't just flew by us. It looked like it was emitting a particular energy about it as it flew by us. It was blistering fast. Now at that point, she's like, okay, he's been looking at this stuff, and now we're seeing weird shit flying by, and this is the first time we've seen weird shit in this way fly by this close in broad daylight. There was another one where I took a picture. There was nothing outside, and all of a sudden there was something that showed up on the picture. And again, it's like, okay, this is not a new agey thing. This is there a physical phenomenon, or is there a real phenomenon associated with what he's studying and what he's looking into, what he's researching, his new research project. And in this new research project, is there any potential at all where this is going to be something that's going to freak me out? And in her case, it was freaking her out. It's freaking her out. I kind of made this point to her that, you know, hey, nothing's probably going to happen here, because more likely than not, it's probably not real. And what I mean by not real, like, I just mean, just because you're studying something, and just because you're looking into something, doesn't necessarily mean that something is actually going to be there. The whole point of knocking on the wall in this case is you think it's a wall. You want to know whether or not that wall is there, or whether the wall is a door. In her case, it wasn't so much that she full on believed. Her thing was, this is freaking me out. Whether I believe it or not is kind of besides the point. Slavoj Žižek has this great line where he says a guy goes to therapy because he thinks that he's a piece of corn. And he said the therapist convinces him, okay, you're not a corn, you're not a corn. Fine, I get it, I'm not a corn. And he says, he walks outside, there's a chicken, and the guy's terrified. And his therapist says, but we've acknowledged that you were not a corn, you were a human being. He says, I know that I'm not a piece of corn, I know that I'm a human being, but it's a chicken know that I'm not a piece of corn. I find that to be fucking awesome. Because ultimately, it's like, yes, I don't believe in this stuff. I don't believe that this stuff is going to take place. I don't believe anything is going to happen, but I'm still slightly terrified by you looking into this. Fucking amazing. Doubt, man. Doubt is an amazing thing. Doubt is rough. Dark City was a great movie. Yeah, Dark City was a great movie. Samuel the Leninist. Have the UFO sightings could be possibly determined by maybe our far away neighbors of a different solar system? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Tabitha Enriquez, Rebel, do you get electric feeling with OBs? Yes. You feel like you're plugged into an electrical outlet. It is the weirdest feeling. When I the first successful one that I had, where I was conscious exit, and you're laying down, and you feel, it feels like you feel like your heart is beating out of your chest. Like for me, that's how it starts. It feels like your heart is beating out of your chest, and it feels like you've plugged into an electrical outlet. Your body feels like it feels so fucking weird. It's like you start hearing this hum, this rattle. It feels like there's a vacuum cleaner plugged next to your ears. It's extraordinarily loud. In some cases, I thought something was calling me or talking to me. It was the weirdest thing. It was slightly freaking me out. Where as you're awake, your body is going into the paralyzed stage. You're conscious. Your body is gone, but you're conscious. And it's like this loud sounds. Your body feels like it's plugged into an outlet. Your heart feels like it's beating out of your chest. And you think to yourself, oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack. My heart is beating out of my chest. But at a certain point, I hear this loud sound, and the sound is so loud, and I started to mess with me a little bit, because it sounds like something trying to talk, but the distortion is on, so I can't necessarily hear what's being said, and I started to focus so heavily on that particular thing. But at a certain point, it stops. Like at a certain point, it's like you break the barrier or something like that. And in that point, after I broke the barrier, everything just went silent. It just went quiet. And my eyes were closed, but I realized I was staring at the ceiling. And it took me a moment. I was like, wait a minute, I'm looking at the ceiling. I'm aware. Like, I'm perfectly aware. And I'm staring at the ceiling, but I know my eyes are closed. I haven't, my eyes were closed when I started this process. They're still closed now. And I kept telling myself, stay calm. Stay calm. Stay calm. Stay calm. Don't freak out. Stay calm. Because part of this thing was I had this fear that something was going to jump out at me while I was in this state. I could not shake that fear to save my life. And I'm aware enough to know that in non-physical reality, you start bringing that stuff into existence. So it's like, I'm terrified of a dog, and so the dog jumps on your chest. It's like, oh, this dog is going to eat me alive. And the dog is about to eat you alive because you think the dog is going to eat you alive. So in my head, being somebody who's looked at all sorts of scary movies, have all sorts of ideas about UFOs and all this other weird new agey stuff, and I'm in this spot and I'm thinking to myself, all right, keep your thoughts at bay. Just don't think. Just don't think. Just be, it's like, how can I say, it's like be aware without thinking, which is not something that you can keep up for any length of time, because the moment that you say, don't think about the pink elephant, you think about the pink elephant. In my case, though, I was able to stay long enough to kind of, it's like, okay, how does this feel as opposed to how reality normally feels? I started thinking from that standpoint. And even, I just remember I was like, all right, I'm done. This is good. I can't keep my thoughts at bay. I'm good. I've demonstrated that I can get to this point. Worst come to worst, I feel like I would be able to get back to this point at some point. I would come back later. I would inch my way into this kind of understanding. It's not like anything else. It's weird. It's a very weird experience. Rubber Cage Rider, yes, if I don't meditate to stay in that zen, the loud sound can jar me back into this world, and I get so pissed off. It's so disorienting. Yeah, it's immensely disorienting. And sometimes it sounds like a person or a thing. Like it sounds like it's like in my case, I honestly thought it was my guide. Like what I mean by that is I've interacted with my guide on multiple occasions, and this is immensely hard to explain. I have an attachment to her. I don't understand the attachment. I don't understand it on this kind of this intellectual level in this way, but there is this emotional attachment where from the very first time that she introduced herself, and there was this kind of energy exchange, I guess. She merged her energy in the mind. It was this very weird like, the only way to describe it, I was put through, it was kind of this thing of like, how much of yourself do you remember? Is that type of stuff. And at the end of this thing, where my goal was supposed to be able to find her within the course of this kind of, it's almost like a test of sorts. And once I found her, she got extraordinarily close to me, and as she got closer to me, I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm about to be molested in the non-physical world. But instead of her touching, she went straight through me, if that makes sense. Like, this is very hard to explain. Like, you weren't, even though you saw yourself as being this physical thing, you weren't necessarily this physical thing. She kind of pushed her energy into my energy in this kind of elated experience. It's this euphoria that I can't necessarily get across, and I don't necessarily understand, but it's just this intense emotional sharing of sorts. It's very weird, and it's very intense, and it's very euphoric, and I have never experienced anything else like it since or before. But at the same token, it's giving me this thing of there's this attachment to her in this way, and so this has been kind of going all the way down through, what, for 20, 30 years at this point, where with multiple occasions where I've seen her or interacted with her. My point is, in this particular case, I'm hearing something, and it sounds like a voice, and it sounds like it's distortion. And as I'm floating in this thing of trying to transition into this kind of OB state, and you're kind of in this in-between state where you're hearing stuff and it's loud and everything else, and I started to get my focus so attuned to what was being said, because I kept thinking to myself, it sounds like somebody's talking to me. And then I started thinking to myself, is that my guide? I wonder, is that my guide? I wonder, is me breaking this barrier of sorts, allowing this kind of non-physical contact? And it wasn't anything. It was just a loud fucking noise. And it's your mind with a cognitive bias creating, like adding a reality to it, if that makes sense. It's really fucking hard to explain without people having a reference point. But it's like your brain, your mindset is constructing reality around the thing that's taking place, and sometimes conforming that into words, or sometimes conforming that into a voice. Sometimes it's, you know, somebody is outside banging on the door, and you break the state and you find out there's nobody banging on the doors. Your conscious fucking with you. It's weird, man. It's bizarre. It's very, very bizarre. It's not an angel, Mino. Is not an angel. Tabitha Enriquez, we're not solid physical matter, more space and everything around us and stuff. Agreed, Tabitha. Yes, that's true. That's very true. Rubber Cage Rally, my spirit guide is my daughter who crossed over when she was 2 months old. Her body died from sudden infant death syndrome. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Divine Mead. Alright, I stayed up long enough. I will see you guys later today. Gotta get some rest. Yeah, I do too. I do too. We're talking about a weird topic, so it's you know. Paradolola? I don't know what that is. Todd Neville. I don't know what those are. I need a definition of those. Jamal sounds like an angel. No, it wasn't an angel. Moni G, it wasn't an angel. It was at most a being. I don't know what that being is though. Stubborn, no courage, no. Morgan and Morgan stopped it. What? There's a tremendous courage in being stubborn. Sometimes it depends on what it is. It depends on the situation. Alice Martyr. I'm going to throw in that thing I read about a brain operating like 11 dimensions and ponder if this is some way of a better handling extra dimensional something. Money G. Hey, why not? Well, I don't think it's the angels. Angels, I don't believe in angels. Like, I that's a religious context to me. That's why I don't believe in angels. Now, I understand the argument of, well, wait a minute, dude. You were just talking about spirit guides. How are you saying you don't believe in angels? I don't know what a spirit guide is. I don't know what an angel is. I don't know what any of that stuff is. There's something, some being, some intelligence that either my subconscious created or unless I'm interacting with something else. And this is not just me. This is people in general. When she's making this thing of this kind of consciousness interacting with other beings and all this other stuff. Yeah, I buy into it. I believe it. Now, is that an angel? Angel comes across as a religious thing to me. Is it a spirit guide that comes across as a bit new agey to me? I have no idea what it is. That's what I'm stuck with. I don't know what it is. When I was younger, I used to think spirit guides. As I got older, it became ambiguous. It became ambiguous. It just became, I have no idea what it is. Let's see. Rebel Cage Rattler, wow, so sorry for your loss. Of course, she's helping out, staying near you on track. Rebel, I feel for you, my biggest fear. A psychological phenomena in which mind responds to stimulus, usually image or sound by perceiving a familiar pattern when none exists. Todd Neville, yes. It's fucking amazing that you know that word, but yes. Yes. Serenade your dogma. Oh. Serrate your dogma. Oh, Modi. Modi, don't be that way. Don't be that way. I'm okay with her crossing, Jamal. Michelle is way better off where she is now. I wouldn't wish her to come back to this world the way it is for anything. I'm at peace with it. Let's see. Aphophenia is a tendency to attribute meaning to perceived connections or patterns between seemingly unrelated things. Confirmation bias is a variation of our... Yeah, fair enough. Yes. Yeah. Always strive to see the 12th dimension. The 13th makes every bit of sense. Yeah, this conversation is bizarre. But look, man, I love... I think I've said before, my channel is like 90-something% politics and some other percentage factor of just weird, bizarre stuff. My channel is just a reflection of who I am. So yeah, I'm gonna have weird stuff in it. Alright, it's 6 in the morning. 6 in the morning. Alright. I'm gonna kill this. It's been 4:20 since 4:20. Alright guys. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you guys for indulging in my bizarre I'm sorry, it's not bizarre or anything else. My interesting phenomena hour. And the part I love about this is this was based on an article by the New York Times. Fucking A. Fucking A. New York Times. I put the article at the bottom for you guys to read it. Guys, thank you all for showing up. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon or at this point, Super Chat. Thanks, guys.